Welcome everybody to the messianicmessage.com. This is our meeting on March 16th, 2024. And before we get started with our Torah reading, I'm going to say a prayer. Father, we thank you for your teaching. We thank you for your word, for your Torah, which you have preserved for 3,500 years. May we learn so much from it just by reading, Father. And I thank you for everyone in this room, and may all of our hearts and eyes be opened in Yeshua's name. Amen. So our Torah reading is Exodus 38:21, Exodus 38:21 to chapter 40, verse 38, and that is actually the end of this book. And I will read the first section here, 38:21 down to 31, and then Michael, are you going to be ready to read at Exodus 39:1? Well, okay, okay, and then we'll go on around the room. Yes. With Julianne, Hillary, Dawn, and if anybody else comes into the room, we'll have them in line. Okay, Exodus 38:21. This is the amount of material used for the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were counted according to the commandment of Moses, for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that Yahweh commanded Moses. With him was Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver, and a skillful workman, and an embroiderer in blue, in purple, in scarlet, and in fine linen. All the gold that was used for the work, in all the work of the sanctuary, even the gold of the offering, was 29 talents, and 730 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. The silver of those who were counted of the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,775 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. A bekah a head, that is, half a shekel, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for every one who passed over, to those who were counted from 20 years old and upward, for 3,550 men. The 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets of the sanctuary and the sockets of the veil. 100 sockets for the 100 talents, a talent for a socket. Of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars, overlaid their capitals, and made fillet for them. The brass of the offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. With this he made the sockets to the door of the tent of meeting, the bronze altar, the bronze grating for it, all the vessels of the altar, the sockets around the court, the sockets of the gate of the court, all the pins of the tabernacle, and all the pins around the court. Exodus 29:1 through 10.
Moreover, from the blue and purple and scarlet fabric they made finely woven garments for serving and ministering in the holy place. They made the holy garments for Aaron, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Bezalel made the ephod of gold and the blue, purple, and scarlet fabric in fine twisted linen. Then Bezalel and Aholiab hammered the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work into the blue, purple, and scarlet fabric and into the fine linen, the work of a skilled craftsman. Pieces for the ephod. It was attached at the two upper edges. The skillfully woven sash with which to bind it, which was on the ephod to hold it in place, was like its workmanship of the same material of gold and blue, purple and scarlet fabric, and fine twisted linen, just as Yahweh had commanded Moses. They made the onyx stones set in settings of gold filigree. They were engraved as signets are engraved with the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. And he put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod to be memorial stones, a remembrance for the sons of Israel, Jacob, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Bezalel made the breastpiece, the work of a skillful craftsman, like the workmanship of the ephod of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet fabric, and fine twisted linen. It was square. They made the breastpiece folded double, a handspan long and a handspan wide when folded double. And they mounted 4 rows of stones on it. The first row was a row of ruby topaz and emerald.
And Julianne, 11 through 20, please.
The second row a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold in their mountings. There were 12 stones according to the names of the sons of Israel, according to their names engraved like a signet, each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. And they made chains for the breastplate at the ends, like braided cords of pure gold. They also made 2 settings of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 braided chains of the gold in the 2 rings of the ends of the breastplate. The 2 ends of the 2 braided chains they fastened in the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in front. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the ephod. They made 2 other gold rings, and put them on the 2 shoulder straps underneath the ephod towards its front, right at the seam above the intricately woven band of the ephod.
Hillary, 21 through 30, please.
And they did bind the breastplate by his rings unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it might be above the belt of the ephod, and that the breastplate might not be loosed from the ephod, as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And he made the robe of the ephod of woven work, all of blue, and there was a hole in the midst of the robe, as the hole of a habergeon, with a band around about the hole, that it should not rend. That they made upon the hems of the robe pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet, and twined linen. And they made belts of pure gold, and put on bells between the pomegranates upon the hem of the robe, round about between the pomegranates, a bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, round about the hem of the robe, to minister in, as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And they made coats of fine linen of woven work for Aaron and for his sons, and at a turban of fine linen, of goodly bonnets of fine linen, and linen breeches of fine twined linen, and a belt of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet of needlework, as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And they made the plate of the holy crown of pure gold, and wrote upon it a writing like to the engravings of a signet, Kodesh La Yahweh.
Dawn, 31 through 43. Just finish the chapter, Dawn.
And they tied it to a blue cord to fasten it above on the turban, as Yahweh had commanded Moses. Thus all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moses. So they did. And they brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its furnishings, its clasps, its boards, its bars, its pillars, and its sockets, the covering of ram skins dyed red, the covering of badger skins, and the veil of the covering, the ark of the testimony with its poles, and the mercy seat, the table, all its utensils, and the showbread, the pure gold lampstand with its lamps, the lamps set in order, all its utensils, and the oil for light, the gold altar, the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, the screen for the tabernacle door, the bronze altar, its grate of bronze, its poles and all its utensils, the laver with its base, the hangings of the court, its pillars and its sockets, the screen for the court gate, its cords, its pegs, all the utensils for the service of the tabernacle for the tent of meeting, and the garments of ministry to minister in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest and his sons' garments to minister as priests, according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moses. So the children of Israel did all the work. Then Moses looked over all the work, and indeed they had done it, as Yahweh had commanded, just so they had done it, and Moses blessed them.
Okay, Constance, Exodus 40, verses 1 through 10, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Then the Lord said to Moses, on the first day of the month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Put the ark of the covenant in it, and screen off the ark with the veil. Bring in the table and set it. Then bring in the menorah and set up the lamps on it. Put the golden altar of incense in the front of the ark of the covenant, and hang the curtain at the entrance of the tabernacle. Put the altar for the burnt offerings in front of the entrance of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it. Set up the court round about and put up the curtain at the gate of the court. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it, consecrating it and all its furnishings, so that it will be sacred. Anoint the altar for burnt offerings and all its utensils, consecrating it so that it will be most sacred. Likewise, anoint the basin with its stand and thus consecrate it. Then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and there wash him with water. Clothe Aaron with the sacred vestments and anoint him, thus consecrating him as my priest. Bring forward his sons, also clothe them with tunics. As you have anointed their father, anoint them also as my priests. Thus, by being anointed, they shall receive perpetual priesthood throughout all the future generations. Moses did just as the Lord had commanded him. On the first day of the first month of the second year, the tabernacle was set up. It was Moses who set up the tabernacle. He placed its pedestals, set up its frames, put in its bars, and set up its columns. He spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering on top of the tent, as the Lord had commanded him. He took the covenant and put it in the ark. He placed poles alongside the ark and set the cover upon it.
Okay, thank you. Verse 21. He brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the screen, and screened the ark of the testimony as Yahweh commanded Moses. He put the table in the tent of meeting on the side of the tabernacle northward, inside of the veil. He set the bread in order on it before Yahweh, as Yahweh commanded Moses. He put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the side of the tabernacle southward. He lit the lamps before Yahweh as Yahweh commanded Moses. He put the golden altar in the tent of meeting before the veil, and he burned incense of sweet spices on it as Yahweh commanded Moses. He put up the screen of the door to the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering at the door of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, and offered on it the burnt offering and the meal offering as Yahweh commanded Moses. He set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it with which to wash. Michael, verse 31 to 38, please.
Then from it Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet. When they entered the tent of meeting and when they approached the altar, they washed just as Yahweh commanded Moses. And he erected the courtyard all around the tabernacle and the altar, and hung the curtain, at the gateway of the courtyard. So Moses finished the work. Then the cloud, the Shekinah, God's visible dwelling presence covered the tent of meeting, and the glory and brilliance of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud remained on it, and the glory and brilliance of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey on until the day when it was taken up. For throughout all their journeys, the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night, and in the sight of all the house of Israel.
Okay, and Julianne, we're going to go to the Haftarah, which is 1 Kings 7, starting at verse 51. 1 Kings 7:51, and read from 51 to 60, please. Oh, wait a minute. 50, let's go before you start reading. It goes to chapter 8, verse 21. So why don't you read 51 and then 8, 1 through 10.
So all the work that King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in the things which his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold and the furnishings. He put them in the treasures of the house of the Lord. Now Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief fathers of the children of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the city of David, which is Zion. Therefore all the men of Israel assembled the king Solomon at the feast in the month of Ethanim, which is the 7th month. So all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. Then they brought up the ark of the Lord, the tabernacle of meeting, and all the holy furnishings that were in the tabernacle. The priests and the Levites brought them up. Also King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled with him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be counted or numbered for multitude. Then the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place into the inner sanctuary of the temple, to the most holy place, under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread their 2 wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim overshadowed the ark and its poles. The poles extended so that the ends of the poles could be seen from the holy place in front of the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen from outside, and they are there to this day. Nothing was in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass when the priests came out of the holy place that the cloud filled the house of the Lord.
Hillary, verses 11 through 21. Just finish that section and that will finish the Haftarah.
Okay. So that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of Yahweh had filled the house of Yahweh. Then spoke Shalomah. Yahweh said that he should dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built you a house to dwell in, a settled place for you to abide in forever. And the king turned his face about and blessed at all the assembly of Yasharel. And all the assembly of Yasharel stood. And he said, Blessed be Yahweh Elohei of Yasharel, which spoke with his mouth unto David my father, and has with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Yasharel out of Mitzrayim, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Yasharel to build a house, that my name might be therein. But I chose David to be over my people of Yasharel. And it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Yahweh Elohei of Yasharel. And Yahweh said unto David my father, Whereas it was in your heart to build a house unto my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless, you shall not build the house, but your son that shall come forth out of your loins, he shall build the house unto my name. And Yahweh has performed his word that he spoke, and I am risen up in the room of David my father, and sit on the throne of Yasharel, as Yahweh promised, and have built a house for the name of Yahweh Elohei of Yasharel.
And verse
And I have
21.
set there And I have set there a place for the ark, wherein is the covenant of Yahweh, which he cut with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim.
Okay, and Dawn, let's go to Revelation 15 and just read 5 through 8, please. Revelation 15, 5 through 8.
After these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened. And out of the temple came the 7 angels, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure bright white linen, and having their chests girded with golden bands. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of Elohim, who lives forever and ever. The temple was filled with smoke from the glory of Yahweh and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed.
Okay, that completes the Torah, the Haftarah, and the Brit Hadashah readings. I'm going to share the screen now, and then we're going to go over to, well, first of all, I have to hit the record button over here and the record button over here. And now we're ready for the teaching. So after we've read all the Torah portion, the Haftarah, and all of the Brit Hadashah, we're going to have the teaching, and let me go hit this focus button. My computer is responding very, very slowly. Come on. There you go. Okay, this is called the first Passover in the land. As you know, we've been studying the book of Joshua because we want to prepare Yahweh's people to identify with Israel, his nation, his kingdom. His kingdom is called Israel. Now, it's been called Israel for 3,500 years. And we need to have our identity associated with Israel, not with America and Canada and New Zealand and South Africa and Germany and Great Britain or wherever people are on the earth. That's not your country, folks. Your nation is Israel. If you are an Israelite through having accepted Yeshua, and so now you need to be preparing yourself to identify as an Israelite. There's a difference between Israelite and Israeli. Israel now, those people are Israelis. They are Jews. They are from the 4 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Simeon, and Levi. And, some families from the northern tribes after the kingdom split that came down to join with them. But they are not Israel. They call themselves Israel, and it confuses people. But Israel is 12 tribes. So we have to understand this difference. And we have to start preparing our hearts to identify with Israel. So, that being said, I'm going to say a prayer for this teaching because our hearts need to be prepared. And so, Father, I pray that our hearts will be coming to you, that our ears and our lips and our hands will all be for your service. Father, I just pray that we will all begin to identify with your kingdom. We identify with Messiah, but we don't identify so much with Yeshua as our king yet. We need to change this, and that's why I believe you have me teaching the history of Israel so that we can learn to identify with your kingdom and learn from the mistakes of the past and the triumphs of the past as well. and learn what we need to do to be your Revelation 12:6 woman. So, Father, whatever comes from you, may it flourish and bear fruit, and whatever words come just from me, let those things, those seeds, fall by the wayside and dry up and blow away, because nobody needs to have to remember my words. They only need to know and remember your words. I pray this in the name of Yeshua. Amen. Okay, so the two spies that we learned about from last week, they are now back across the river, and they are in the camp, and they have told Joshua what has happened, and Joshua is now encouraged that Israel will indeed be handed all the victories in Canaan that Yahweh promised. So it is time to move forward. Joshua 3:1. Joshua got up early in the morning after the two spies returned, and they moved from Shittim and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel. They camped there before they crossed over. The journey was only about 9 kilometers, or that's about 5.5 miles, folks. But remember, this population is roughly the same size as the one that came out of Egypt, which is estimated at 2 to 3 million people. So, you've got to move 2 or 3 million people about 5.5 miles, and that's probably going to take about all day because of the way that everything moved. They sounded the trumpets, and then everybody moved, starting with the east side, which was Judah, and then from to the south and the west and the north, and everybody moved. It was all very orderly. The camp moved first. The tabernacle moved first, and then everybody followed in orderly succession. So this took a bit. This took a little bit of time, but Joshua would have told the people probably the night before, we're going to move in the morning, so get ready. So they were probably up late preparing everything, right? So in Joshua 3:2, then we read that after they got to the east side of the Jordan River and got set up again, they had 3 days. And the officers went through the middle of the camp. Now, those officers are shoter. The shoter were scribes. And probably, and in my thinking, it probably was one of those scribes that wrote the book of Joshua, put it all on scroll after Joshua died. He was keeping the account. Verse 3, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of Yahweh, your God's covenant, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then leave your place and follow it. So again, leaving your place, it's going to happen in the same order, as when they went from Shittim or from anywhere else when they left. The tabernacle rises up, the ark goes, and then the people go in orderly fashion as they followed. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, the ark, of about 2,000 cubits by measure. Don't come closer to it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. So this has never happened before. So now I did the math. The space between the people and the ark was about 3,000 feet using a 1.5 foot cubit. If you use the other kinds of cubit, this is a man's cubit, then you have the tabernacle or temple cubit, and you have a royal cubit, and they're all different lengths. This 1.5 foot cubit is the shortest one. This is one I used. What is not clear here is whether the people streamed around the ark on both sides, or if the ark was like off to one side while the people went around it only on one side. If this people were streaming on both sides, the width of the people streaming across the Jordan River was double, because that would mean 3,000 and 3,000 feet, 6,000 feet, which is a little bit wider than a mile. Actually, my math is probably off here, because if they had to stay 2,000, so it was pretty wide. 3,000 feet on one side and 3,000 feet on the other if the ark was in the middle. This is big, and this is important to know this, because it's going to play into something for the Canaanites later on. Verse 5, Joshua said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Yahweh will do wonders among you." So a mile-wide stream of people crossing the dried-up riverbed of the Jordan River is a repeat of the Red Sea dry bed crossing. The first was a great miracle, and this second river crossing was another miracle. Both crossings are archetypal baptisms, the mikvah, the baptism. This is a trial by water in which the unclean person or the sinner throws him or herself into the water, thus admitting his or her uncleanness and or their sin, and then they come straight up out of the water. In the account of Yeshua's baptism, it says he went under the water and he came up straight away. That's how that was done. In ancient times, water trials determined the guilt or innocence of a person. The Nile was the water trials for the Hebrew baby boys, but even during the witch trials of the 1600s, they made use of water trials. Now, male babies, they could not swim. They were too young. But the Egyptians, in their wisdom, deemed this to be proof of the guilt of the Hebrews in the treachery that they were accused of by Pharaoh. And in the witch trials, likewise, were unjust, because the women and men accused of witchcraft were tied at the wrists and the ankles. Again, the idea of a water trial is that you go in the water, and if you drown, you're guilty. If you come back up, you're not. How is it just to throw a baby that can't swim into the Nile River? Or throw men and women whose hands and feet are tied and they drown, and then, the Catholic Church says, "Oh, that just proves they were witches." You see, that kind of trial is unjust, because the accused cannot defend themselves in the water. At the Red Sea, though, God had already deemed Israel sinless because of the blood on the doorposts, and he had already deemed Egypt to be sinful, and so they all drowned in the Red Sea. Israel came out squeaky clean on the other side. And likewise at the Jordan River, Israel is going to come out squeaky clean after they've purified themselves for this crossing, their water trial, which is now going to deem them to be properly purified and able to enter the land. This is an important point for those who want to enter the land with Yeshua at the end of the tribulation, proper purification. What do you think the 1260 days of the Revelation 12:6 woman being in the wilderness is doing? That place is prepared for her where she will be nurtured, not in her body, but in her spirit with Yahweh's word. Joshua 3:6. Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, "Take up the ark of the covenant and cross over before the people." They took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. Yahweh said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to magnify you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. So the people needed a firm understanding that Joshua is now their leader, now that Moses is gone. And Yahweh wanted to make sure that there would be no defiance to Joshua's authority, as there was with Korah to Aaron and Moses. You know, I got to make this point. During wartime is not the time for people to rise up against their commander. That's just not a good idea. Yeshua said a house divided against itself cannot stand, and that's, it's a good thing these people didn't rise up against Joshua. So it will be Joshua now who commands the priests carrying the ark, not Moses. So you don't get any higher rank on the earth than Joshua at that moment. I'm talking about on the entire earth, not just in Israel or in Canaan. Total respect and compliance is needed to succeed in battle. And the people needed to see that it was Yahweh whom Joshua obeyed, and that Joshua was commanding them as Moses had by the voice of Yahweh. Verse 8, you shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here and hear the words of Yahweh your God. Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive the Canaanite, Hittite, Hivite, Perizzite, Girgashite, Amorite, and Jebusite out from before you. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passes over before you into the Jordan. So now the confidence of the Israelites are going to soar to the heavens when they see the waters part in the Jordan River. I suspect, they didn't know how this was going to happen. They may have speculated, but Yahweh doesn't tell us the details of things. They may have speculated that the Jordan River would part, but who knows? But they would have heard the story of the Red Sea crossing from their parents, that are now dead. But by this Jordan River crossing, they will know their conquest is assured, just like it was at the Red Sea when Yahweh, not the people, Yahweh conquered the Egyptian army. But this time, the conquest is going to have a very elegant army. They've been trained for 40 years. They're going into battle, and now they are assured of victory. Joshua 3:12. Now, therefore, take 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, for every tribe a man. And it shall be that when the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of Yahweh, the Lord of all the earth, rests in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan will be cut off. The waters that come down from above shall stand in one heap. When the people moved from their tents to pass over the Jordan, the priests who bore the ark of the covenant being before the people, and when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the ark had dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks all the time of harvest, the water which came down from above stood and rose up in one heap a great way off at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those that went down toward the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, were wholly cut off. Then the people passed over near Jericho. So this crossing happened in the spring when the Jordan River swells and overflows its banks, and the swollen Jordan River stood at attention while the Ark of the Covenant was in the midst of the waters. Now, Moses' instrument to part the Red Sea was his staff, but Joshua's instrument was the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark's destiny was Israel. And so once inside Israel's border, the ark will never leave until Yahweh takes it away to put it in his temple. Now, there are many who believe the ark is under Temple Mount, hidden in Qumran, under guard in Ethiopia, and so forth. No, John saw the Ark of the Covenant in Yahweh's temple in heaven. Revelation 11:19 says, God's temple that is in heaven was opened, and the ark of the Lord's covenant was seen in his temple. Lightnings, sounds, thunders, an earthquake, and great hail followed. And of course, Revelation 11 is the chapter of the two witnesses. Our ark, Yeshua, will be seen by the world and by all the Israelites, just as the Canaanites saw the ark that split the Jordan River to make way for Israel's wholesale invasion of the promised land. Look, it of us to think that the Canaanites from all over Canaan were not watching what was happening. In our time, the world will be watching, but they will do nothing, just as the Canaanites did nothing in Joshua's time. And Yeshua, like Joshua, will lead us across the Jordan River from the ingathering place in the wilderness, exactly where those ancient Israelites were. Then in, I put the wrong words there, are now, but it was then in Joshua 3. But there is one difference. We will cross in the fall, not in the spring. Maybe by now, and with all the two previous teachings, if you've been listening to these recordings, you will begin to understand why Joshua is so important for us. This is an archetypal situation. It's a pattern that's going to be repeated. And we need to understand these things. I think a lot of people won't understand until they find themselves over here. But those who have studied this and understand the repeating patterns of Yahweh, we will be able to explain to people, what's going to happen next. So I heard that a long time ago from a friend of mine that, we'll be able, because we know the patterns, we'll be able to say, well, this next thing is going to happen. Joshua 3:17. The priests who bore the ark of Yahweh's covenant stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, and all Israel crossed over on dry ground. It was not muddy until all the nation had passed completely over the Jordan. When all the nation had completely crossed over the Jordan, Yahweh spoke to Joshua, saying, Take 12 men out of the people, a man out of every tribe, and command them, saying, Take from out of the middle of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you'll camp tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, a man out of every tribe. Joshua said to them, Cross before the ark of Yahweh your God into the middle of the Jordan, and each of you pick up a stone and put it on your shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in the future, saying, What do you mean by these stones? Then you shall tell them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of Yahweh's covenant. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever. So these 12 stones are a repeat of the 12 stones set up by Moses in the wilderness in Ezekiel 24:4. In ancient times, pillars were erected in memorial to the god of whatever nation. The pillars of the Canaanite nations were to be destroyed, remember? But Yahweh's pillar was to remain as the only God of the promised land, so that everybody would know this promised land is Yahweh's. Joshua 4:8. The children of Israel did as Joshua commanded and took up 12 stones out of the middle of the Jordan as Yahweh spoke to Joshua according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. They carried them over with them to the place where they camped and laid them down there. Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood, and they are there to this day. For the priests who bore the ark stood in the middle of the Jordan until everything was finished that Yahweh commanded Joshua to speak to the people according to all that Moses commanded Joshua, and the people hurried and passed over. When all the people had completely crossed over, Yahweh's ark crossed over with the priests in the presence of the people. Now, this seems like not such an important piece of information, but I think it really is. You know, the ark was covered, of course, but the people would have associated the miracle crossing with the power derived from the Ark of the Covenant. The ark represented their king, Yahweh, going before them into battle, which was something Yahweh wanted to withdraw from the Israelites for their golden calf treachery. He wanted to take away from them the reproach of that. And so I'm going to have a little bit more to say about that in a minute. But the people were able to see that their king was going before them, opening the way. Joshua 4:12. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed before the children of Israel as Moses spoke to them. About 40,000 men, ready and armed for war, passed over before Yahweh to battle to the plains of Jericho. Now, that's 40,000 men from those tribes. That's not all of the warriors of Israel. On that day, Yahweh magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. Yahweh spoke to Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of the testimony that they come up out of the Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, Come up out of the Jordan. So it is an important thing, as I said earlier, that Joshua had the authority of Yahweh vested in him to command the priests carrying Yahweh's ark. This is a military operation, folks. The priests are in charge during peacetime, but the commander of the army is in control during times of war. So there could be nothing more impressive than being there to see the ark as it stayed the waters and then crossed into Israel after everyone was out of the riverbed. Joshua 4:18. When the priests who bore the ark of Yahweh's covenant had come up out of the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet had been lifted up to the dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and went back over its banks as before. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal at the east border of Jericho. Excuse me. Joshua set up those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan in Gilgal. And he spoke to the children of Israel, saying, When your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. For Yahweh your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before you until you had crossed over, as Yahweh your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us until we had crossed over, that all the peoples of the earth may know that Yahweh's hands is mighty, that you may fear Yahweh. Now, you know, the Haggadah at Passover has the what you're supposed to tell your children instruction. Well, I've not ever read a Passover Haggadah that has this story in it. Maybe you have, but I haven't. Yet, here we are, commanded to tell this story because it is every bit as important and impressive as the Red Sea crossing. It happens at Passover. The generation that crossed the Red Sea did not make it to the promised land. The waters parted again for the second generation that did enter the land. And, by the way, they were not attacked by the Canaanites on their way in. The Israelites crossing into Canaan, the promised land, more closely aligns with our own future at the end of the tribulation than does the Exodus from Egypt. The Exodus from Egypt sets up a pattern of deliverance, and the pattern is continued here with Joshua, and there are going to be other patterns of deliverance in the scripture, and there's at the end there's going to be a deliverance. So the Exodus sets all that idea up about the pattern of deliverance, but this crossing into Canaan is somewhat different. It's similar, but different, but it more closely aligns with our own future. Jeremiah said, and this, it's correct what I'm saying, because Jeremiah said a time would come when the first Exodus would not be remembered. Folks, we are close to that being the case, given how close we are to the end of days. Jeremiah 6:14, behold, the days come, says Yahweh. Yahweh is saying this, that it will no more be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But it will be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, from all of the countries where he had driven them. I will bring them again into their land that I gave to their fathers. Now I'm going to tell you why the Canaanites did not attack Israel as they crossed the river. Joshua 5:1. When all the kings of the Amorites, see, they were watching, who were beyond the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea. They're all the way across Israel over there by the Mediterranean Sea. When they all heard how Yahweh had dried up the rivers of the Jordan from before the children of Israel until we had crossed over, their heart melted, and there was no more spirit in them because of the children of Israel. Those kings heard that the Jordan River had dried up for the crossing of about 2 to 3 million people. How did these kings hear of this unless there were Canaanite scouts on the west side of the river watching it happen? Rahab had said their hearts melted over the Red Sea miracle. Well, you can just guess their reaction when the same miracle happened on their own border. She had said the Canaanites' hearts melted away because of Israel. So just think what the 40-year wait would have done to them. 40 years of anticipation of something coming that is really bad wears people out. We're kind of experiencing that now on earth, right? People all over the globe are in anticipation of a huge change for the worse. And I imagine all of the Canaanite kings had consulted with their, magicians and their prophets and all, as to the timing of Israel during 40 years, the result that it would have. And that's what's going on in the world today. People are, consulting, they're wanting to know what the timing of the tribulation and all that's happening again. So we have a sense of how those guys felt 3,500 years ago, right? Their hearts melting away. Yeah, you bet. Watching a stream of people over a mile wide entering your land, you bet that would be unnerving. But let's talk about this very unique invasion again. And think how smart it was to invade Canaan with all of the people in tow. Not just sending the warriors over, see? No, we took all of the people. Yahweh took all of his people, not just the warrior. This was the most unique invasion in all of Earth's history. No other nation has ever invaded another nation this same way. It's just not done. Militaries battle militaries, and after the battle, they go after the civilians who are left and they kill them. But, no military ever invaded with whole families coming along. Also, consider that after Israel crosses the river, they're going to stop for circumcising the uncircumcised males for 4 days and having Passover and unleavened bread for 7 days. That's a really strange invasion. This is a 21-day stop in all that Israel is going to do. 21 days. They came in at the 1st of the month or on the 10th of the month, so it's not 21 days, is it? It's 7 and 4. I'm sorry, I can't add. 11 days, they're stopping. They're doing other stuff. And the Canaanites are scratching their heads going like, what in the world? They want to know what secret weapon Israel had to use against them. Well, it's Yahweh. His name is Yahweh. That's their secret weapon, folks. Also, the Canaanites would not have had a way to know how many warriors were invading the Israelite nation. All through the histories, they're counting warriors. I mean, even in the book of Joshua, they count how many warriors that they're sending and how many warriors they're fighting. These Canaanites had no way of knowing how many warriors was among that Israelite invasion. Because, they saw 2 or 3 million people crossing in a dried river gap over a mile wide made by the priests carrying the ark, and they would have been terrified. Joshua 5:2. At that time, Yahweh said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise again the sons of Israel the second time. Joshua made himself flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at the hill of foreskins. This is the reason Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Egypt who were males, all the men of war, died in the wilderness along the way after they came out of Egypt, for all the people who came out were circumcised. But all the people who were born in the wilderness along the way as they came out of Egypt had not been circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, even the men of war who came out of Egypt, were consumed because they did not listen to Yahweh's voice. Yahweh swore to them that he would not let them see the land which Yahweh swore to their fathers that he would give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. Their children, whom he raised up in their place, were circumcised by Joshua, for they were uncircumcised because they had not circumcised them in the way. So interestingly, This second generation was not prepared for having Passover. In fact, as a generation, they had not kept Passover because it is unlawful for a man to keep Passover uncircumcised. Their first generation parents, as an act of rebellion against Yahweh for his deliverance from Egypt, had not memorialized Passover after the first one in Numbers 9, or they would have circumcised their sons. Now, that's gratitude, folks. Yeah, thanks for bringing us out of Egypt, but, we got this thing. We're just going to do it our way from now on. They were so wicked, they wouldn't even give the sign of the Abrahamic covenant to their sons. Yet, Yahweh honored their offspring. This is a pattern we need to understand about him honoring our offspring. He is a covenant-keeping God. Even when we don't or won't, he will and he does. But let's take a minute and consider something about this second generation, because, it's one thing to say, my mom and dad did not circumcise me. It's another thing to never think of being circumcised so you can obey God's commandments and keep the Passover. A circumcised heart would want to follow up with circumcision of the flesh like Abraham did. His heart was circumcised first. His flesh circumcision came decades later. So we cannot blame the uncircumcision of those men because as male babies they were not circumcised only on their first generation parents. Because, once a man reaches the age of majority, if his heart is circumcised, he will want to get his flesh circumcised. It's a matter of the heart. I've known several grown men in my life who wanted to be circumcised in compliance with the scripture. This second generation, however, doesn't seem to have circumcised hearts, even though they are highly cooperative. I believe Moses, Joshua, and Caleb had been keeping Passover along with Aaron's line of priests and their Levite servants. So, some of this generation could have approached them to ask for circumcision in order to obey Yahweh, but apparently they did not. This is important because perhaps some of our people may be in the same situation. And like our own people, some of the men with Joshua were approaching 60 years old when Joshua got himself those flintstones to make those knives. So before they can do battle, they have to be circumcised so they can do their very first Passover at the very first Passover that will ever take place in the land. The second generation looks as if it is righteous and circumcised in the heart, but folks, maybe they're so cooperative simply because they are tired of being in the wilderness. This won't fly in our future. We will be circumcised in the heart and in the flesh before we cross over. We're going to find out that there are still rebels among this generation with Joshua who went across the Jordan River into the promised land. In this upcoming escape from Babylon and getting to the ingathering place in the wilderness, you better have your heart set toward Yahweh and being a law-abiding citizen of Israel, or you will be separated from the righteous for being a rebel, before we cross the Jordan River. This is going to happen. The separation will happen in the wilderness before the Jordan River crossing. You won't get to cross over. Ezekiel 20, verses 33 to 38. As I live, says the Lord Yahweh, surely with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out, I will be king over you. Who's he talking to here? Israel. You just got to go further up in the chapter, like it, chapter or verse 1 through 10. You'll see it's Israel. I will bring you out from the peoples and will gather you out of the countries in which you are scattered with a mighty hand and outstretched arm and wrath poured out. That's also tribulation talk. He's pouring out wrath at everybody. I will bring you to the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face, just as I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So I will enter into judgment with you, says the Lord Yahweh. I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge from you the rebels and those who disobey me. I will bring them out of the land where they live. They're going to end up with us in the ingathering, in the wildernesses of Moab and Edom, but they shall not enter into the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. Joshua 5:8. When they were done circumcising the whole nation, they stayed in their places in the camp until they were healed. Yahweh said to Joshua, Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. Therefore the name of that place was called Gilgal to this day. What was the reproach of Egypt that was on them? It was the Egyptian golden calf, the son of the cow named Hathor. His name was Hapi, who was a god that was resurrected by the Israelites. A god who was killed by Yahweh, and then they turned right around and, they resurrected him and made an image in gold to him so that they could worship him. They returned, as it were, to Egypt. So actually, they never came out of Egypt with their hearts. Their bodies came out, but their hearts stayed in Egypt. And even in the time of Jeremiah and Ezekiel, they're talking about all these hundreds of years later, 1,000 years later, and your hearts are still in Egypt. Malachi 4:5-6 says, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. We are turning our hearts back to Israel with this study because one of our fathers is Israel, whose given name at birth was Jacob. We have to turn our hearts, folks. We don't belong to any other nation but Israel, the nation of our king, Yeshua. If Yeshua is your king, you are an Israelite. And you are subject to and liable for every word, every commandment, every law from Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22:21. Be an Israelite. Joshua 5:10. The children of Israel encamped in Gilgal. They kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. They ate unleavened cakes and parched grain of the produce of the land on the next day after the Passover in the same day. The manna ceased on the next day after the end of Passover, after they had eaten of the produce of the land. The children of Israel didn't have manna anymore, but they ate of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. I can't wait for us to eat the fruit of the land when Yeshua crosses over the river ahead of us. This concludes this week's teaching and history lesson. May it be edifying to you and help you in your walk with Yahweh. Okay, so it took me a little longer to give that that teaching. Okay, let me see. I want to expand this. Okay, there it is. I don't know why, but I want to see. Hide video view. No, guys, I can't get back to you. Recording is in progress, but I can't see the view. It's not coming back. Huh. Your network connection is good. I want to, okay, grid view. I want to see the whole, everybody. Well, guys, I don't know here,
You're
but I'm
still
going,
sharing your screen. Maybe that you're still
I
sharing
know,
your screen. Maybe that has something to do with it.
yes, and do you see in that list where I can shut that screen off? Because I don't see that. That's what I'm looking for. More panels, um, hide view, screen sharing, stop the screen sharing. There we go. Oh, you're back. It's a miracle. Oh my goodness. Okay. I have to learn how to do these controls. I'm doing like 4 different controls. You know, the WebEx room, the Wondershare screen sharing, the audio, which is in Audacity, and the WebEx thing. I have a lot of little buttons to push. So, y'all, some of you weren't here until after I got started, but I hope you heard most of that. Anybody have questions or comments? I hope that it was edifying and educational and it inspired you for what is coming. You know, we can't, thank you, Dawn. Dawn has been teaching a lot about these eclipses, and I've been doing a little study on these eclipses and the signs in the heavens. I'm not saying that, the eclipses are going to be bringing destruction, but they certainly herald destruction. And then we have, this Cetus constellation, which is going to would be, if you had a telescope, I guess, would be visible to you at that time on April 8th. And Cetus is the whale, or it is also Leviathan, depending upon who you talk to. And that points to Jonah and the destruction of Nineveh. And we have all the towns of Nineveh in this 120-mile path of eclipse. And Dawn's been doing a really good job studying this out and presenting it. And, if you guys are not on, I know you probably listen to her through His Word Heals, but if you're not on the in gathering, it would be pretty good for you to be on there on Telegram. Okay, I'm done, Dawn. Go ahead. Say what you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you for that. There's a lot of signs in the heaven, even that just keep showing up even more and more that you listen to people. And so by far, what we've done is not an exhaustive study, but it's just to get you started because it's amazing what's going on in the heavens. But what I was going to say about inspired people, actually, you inspired me that, we already have, a customized Haggadah that we put together ourselves that add so much about Yeshua and point to Yeshua because, of course, that's the focus of our Passover. But actually, I think it's a great idea to add more of the scriptures about the crossing over the Jordan, which I don't think we have any or very many of those. And so that's a really good idea to add that because, yeah, I'm familiar with the scriptures, and there's more scriptures even that say in Isaiah that you will not no longer remember, the Red Sea crossing, but he's going to do a new thing, a wondrous thing. And so now I'm inspired to add more of the Jordan crossing and what we should be looking for to this year's Passover. So I'm excited about that. I just wanted to say that. And yeah, it was really, really great message. Thank you.
John.
Kimberly. Kimberly, I wonder if you could please just expand a little bit further by what you meant when you said for what's coming. Would you mind just, clarifying or expanding on what you meant there?
What's coming is the tribulation. This, there are many scriptures that talk about, Joel, for instance, about, when the tribulation is coming, look for the signs in the sky. Yeshua talked about that. Revelation talks about signs in the sky. And, we've had since 2015, 2014, 2015 with the tetrads, Yahweh warning his people. Those are not for the world, those warnings. Those are for his people to know. He's just sending out warning after warning after warning to his people. This tribulation is coming. Is it this year, next year, 2028, when some people say it'll all be over? 2030, 2031, 2040? We don't know. But what we do know is that a time is coming when he's going to stop warning and just start acting. So we want to heed the warnings. That's what I meant when I said about what's coming. Yes? Yes, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. I wonder if you support the view that Elohim wants his people back in the land. He wants all his people back in the land. I'm just wondering, this is not, kind of a doctrine, but there's something in my mind. Is it possible that he wants them all in the land so that judgment comes first to the Jews, as Paul tells us, the Apostle Paul, and that he brings them back so that they can go through a tribulation in the land of Israel, and effectively the greater or the great tribulation is reserved for the nations of the world. Do you see anything there, or am I on the wrong tracks altogether? I know it's not scriptural, but I'm just asking.
Well, I believe that Yahweh does want us all back in the land, and he's going to be the one to bring us back to the land. The Jews are not allowing anyone who is a non-Jew into the land to make Aliyah, but Mystery Babylon has to rise, and Mystery Babylon is rising right now with this Gaza war. And I posted on the ingathering today about that, Yahweh has a way of doing wars. And we're going to see Yahweh's way of doing wars. He goes in, he kills, and it's just over, It's man who wants to be, glorified, and they go in and they have grandiose battles, and they don't just wipe out the population like they're supposed to, according to Yahweh. And so, the Israelis' battle in Gaza is meant for the glorification of the Jews. It's not meant for the glorification of Yahweh. When they get control, they are going to cause tribulation. And there's an antichrist that's going to rise up during their time of power. And they will persecute non-Jews, particularly the non-Jews who say that Yeshua is God, Messiah, Savior, King. Those people are going to be punished. And they're going to punish Messianic Jews who believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. So that's the first part of the tribulation. When the king of the north attacks, there will be a big dispersion out of Judea, out of Israel, into the wilderness by those who Yahweh has selected to make it here to the wilderness. And then at the same time that's happening, Iran and his cohorts are going to be going out around the world to convert and to kill those who will not convert to Islam. That's going to be the second Antichrist. So during that time, the woman of Revelation 12:6 will be here in the wilderness, in the same places where the children of Israel were the first time. And when Yeshua comes, he's going to prepare everybody, everyone who is his people, to enter into his land. And then he will lead us across the river after he has separated out the rebels from the righteous. So I don't know if that answered your question, because your question was kind of a simple question. My comment back to you was a little bit more complicated than your question. So, but maybe that helped you to get an idea.
Yes, it does actually. It puts things into perspective. I know it's not quite in keeping with what I actually mentioned about the Jews going through perhaps a greater hell than they went through, say, with the Holocaust, etc. But that I was thinking that they would go through some kind of tribulation in the land, and that the outer world or the nations would
Yeah,
have, if you like, great tribulation.
yeah, they will. They will go through that when Iran attacks. Hillary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Just wondering, can you be more specific about who the King of the North is? Do you
Sure.
know? Okay, thanks.
Well, the King of the North is okay, Daniel talks about 10 kings that would arise and a little king, 11th one, that would come. Remember? And for eons, Christians have been trying to determine who those 10 kings were, and everybody had their list of, Roman emperors. Well, it turns out that there are 10 major caliphates, religious governments of Islam. 10 major ones.
Okay.
Daniel talked about how 3 of those horns got plucked up. Well, it turns out, I keep using that term, it turns out that the Sunnis, you see, the Sunnis and the Shiites have been fighting over the succession from Muhammad for the last 1400 years.
Yes.
And they split between Sunni and Shia. Well, the Sunnis have had control of every caliphate except 3. 3 times the Shiites got control. They, fighting each other at war. They got control of the caliphate, the religious control over all Islam. But 3 times they were plucked up by the Sunnis, coming back swiftly to take that away from the Shiites.
Oh.
So today, the Sunnis and the Shiites are still at war. And the Sunnis are, nations like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan is a Sunni nation. The southern nations that are aligned with the U.S. and with Israel, those are Sunni nations. The north of the Middle East is Shiite. Iran, Iraq, Syria, even though Syria is not really a Shiite nation. Their population is more Sunni. Bashar al-Assad is more aligned with Iran, and then you have Hezbollah. So that's the coalition of four. And then there used to be only just a +1 until about 2019. There was a +1, and that +1 was Russia. It turns out, I'm sorry, I keep using that. Turns out that in the history of Russia, if you look at their cultures and at who they are for thousands of years, Russia is populated by a large population of Persia. Who is Persia today? Iran. They have open borders with each other. Persia, Iran, and Russia. Now, there are other populations in Russia. Ukraine helped in the population of having Europeans go into Russia and become Russians many years ago, about 1,700 or 800 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but that came from some of those people in Russia are from the tribes of Israel. But there is a big constituent of Persians with Russia. That's why you have the 4+1. Now, that term used to appear on the internet and in Wikipedia, but now it's become 4+2. How did it become 4+2? Because Iran is now in cahoots by military and economic treaty with the Chinese. And the Chinese are Canaanites, as you know. They're from Sini, who is from Canaan, and Mount Sinai, Sinai Peninsula and all of that. That's named for that family from Canaan. So the Chinese are those people. So the king of the north is the 4+2. And when they hate two groups of people. They hate the Satans, the little Satan and the great Satan, Israel and the U.S. They hate that group. But the Shiites also hate the Sunnis. They don't like Sunnis. And so they're going to sweep down and they're going to kill as many of the people as they can from the great Satan and the little Satan and the Sunnis. And where is the caliphate today? It's in Mecca. And when they come across the Jordan border up at Daraa, Syria, which is like 3 kilometers from the Jordan border, and by the way, there's skirmishes constantly on the northern border of Jordan. The Jordan army is excellent at taking care of those. But they're going on. They've been going on since the Arab uprising. And so when that army comes down into Jordan and they come down from Lebanon into Israel as a unified unit coming down, Daniel 11 says that they will sweep through the glorious land, which is Israel, and they will sweep through Jordan, Egypt, and then there's another, and Libya and Ethiopia. But then Daniel says, and the other countries. What other country is there? Well, there's some in North Africa, that were not present, in his time, like Sudan, for instance, and some others. Yeah. Saudi Arabia is part of the other countries that Daniel couldn't name. They're going to come down Route 15, and they're just going to keep on going from the north to the south of Jordan, and they're going to cut across and go right straight to Mecca and take Saudi Arabia and take Mecca. And that will be the 11th little horn. They are the Shiites who are worse than the Sunnis about converting people. If a Shiite in that time approaches you and says, you must say the Shahada, which is, declaring certain things about Muhammad and Allah, and you
Yeah.
don't do it, you're dead. You're dead.
Oh boy.
So that
Well,
is
that's a really good explanation. Thank you.
well, that's who's going to go out around the world. At the end, between in Daniel 11:40 to 45, it says he goes out around the world. But the one that goes out around the world has now spread his tent from the glorious city to the sea. So Iran is going to have control of Israel.
Oh.
Dawn, I know I went long, Dawn. I hope you kept your thought.
No worries at all. That was really interesting, and I know that you and I have a little bit different ideas of maybe how the Anti-Messiah is going to show up and who he is and all of that stuff. But I love to listen to your ideas because just like in the first, in Yeshua's first coming, it didn't happen the way everybody thought. And so I'm open to listening to other ideas and just watching to see which one actually comes to fruition. Because then that way, as long as we're watching, then if our ideas aren't completely right, well, then we're not going to miss it because we're still watching and listening to other people's ideas. And so I have a question for you that always comes about the Islamic anti-Messiah. And so maybe you can let me know what you think. Just a second, I have to find it. I thought I had it, and here it is. Okay, Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And so, is your understanding of that when Yeshua was cut off in the midst of a week, and after his 3-year ministry, he was cut off? This is referring to Yeshua, right?
That's what I believe, yes.
Okay, so then the rest of verse 26, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, those that destroyed the city and the sanctuary after Yeshua was cut off were the Romans. So they are called the people of the prince that shall come. Is the prince that shall come here referring to the anti-Messiah?
I don't think so, but go ahead.
Okay, so that's my question. Who do you think that is then, with reference, if this is referring to the anti-Messiah, then it would be, he would be coming from Europe. But if it's not, then who is it referring to?
Well, let me go over to Daniel because I haven't gotten over there yet. And I will tell you that I believe that the people, I'm going to re-answer your question, because the people of the prince that comes to destroy the city and the sanctuary was Rome in the time of Yeshua, but it is not the same in the end of days. There is in Daniel 9:27 it says, there is one called He, and this He will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week. In the middle of the week, He will cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. Well, we're talking here about Daniel is very cryptic, and he talks about 2 times, the time during Yeshua, and then he jumps all the way to the end of time before Yeshua comes back. So this first He makes a firm covenant with many for 1 week, and we know that that one is the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. In the middle of the week, there is another He who will cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Now, in the time of Daniel, there was a possibility, and some people believe that it was Antiochus who fulfilled this about the sacrifice and the offering ceasing. But to the end of the days, there is a second Antichrist. The Antichrist will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week. In the middle of the week, the Antichrist will cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. And so you're talking about two different men here, two different Antichrists. One is going to make a firm covenant, and they're going to think that it's a permanent thing, because he's made it for 1 week. What is 1 week? It's 7 days. And so what is 7 days? It's a completion. They're going to believe that their Messiah is going to be forever. That's what the Jews believe. And he's going to take them into the world to come. And then, he will die. This is also a Jewish belief. This one will die, but his sons will be kings after him, one after another, in succession, forever, in the world to come. That's Judaism. But in the middle of the week, there's another Antichrist who will come that will cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. The Jews are not expecting that. I don't know how they read this and don't see that, that's how this is going to work out. But they believe that this was Antiochus and that this is already passed and done away with. So, on the wing of abominations, who is more abominable than Mystery Babylon? On the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, and even to the full end, and that which is determined. Wrath will be poured out on the desolate. So we're talking about an end times scenario here in Daniel 9:7. So Daniel skips from Daniel 9:26, he skips 2,000 years down to the end of times. So the prince that came the first time was the Romans, but it's not the Romans at the end of time. It's the king of the north, who also in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is the one that comes from Persia, and Persia is Iran.
Okay, so I like the idea of the two anti-messiahs, because I've always thought there was a fake one that comes first, is what I call, a pseudo anti-messiah, that then the real anti-messiah thinks that everybody thinks, oh, he's coming to save them from this other anti-messiah. But I still think that the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city. So the people of the prince that shall come destroyed the city back then, but that prince hasn't come yet. So maybe that prince is the one who makes the first covenant, and then possibly the Iranian one stops the sacrifice, possibly, because I could see where they wouldn't want that on Temple Mount. So I can see both, and so I'm going to be watching for all possibilities. Thank you for that.
Okay, John.
Kimberly, a little bit confused, but it sounds very logical about the two messiahs. The Antichrist. But you referred to the first one as a Jewish messiah. Who is he actually? Is he a figure who will be accepted only by the Jewish people and hence called a Jewish messiah? And presumably the second one, is a world figure in terms of the second anti-messiah. Can you expand a little bit on that, please?
Well, all I can say about it is that the Jews say they will not follow any king who is not a Jew.
Okay, so is he a false Messiah then
Oh,
to us?
absolutely. Absolutely. He is going to be the one that Yeshua said, if one comes in his own name, you will believe him. I come in my Father's name. You don't
Yes.
believe me, but one comes in his own name, you'll believe him. That's the one that he's telling the Jews, one is going to come in his own name and you're going to believe him.
Maybe that was meant when they accused him, Yeshua, while he was here on earth, as the false Messiah. That's the irony or the twist, isn't it? He was the true Messiah, yet they
Yeah.
accused him of being the false Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Okay.
they didn't like him because he was going to bring back all the northern tribes and restore all 12 tribes. He said that. I've come to, get the sheep from the other sheepfold, and I've come for the lost house of Israel. And they knew what that meant. But they had had 400 and some years of this is just a Jewish thing. We are just going to keep this a Jewish thing. You're not going to do that. We'll just show you. We're going to put you on the cross. We're going to kill you for trying to bring
Right.
back those apostates.
Okay. So this false Jewish Messiah that is to come, the first one, could it be linked to what's happening at the moment where they are actually building an altar facing the Temple Mount, and they are saying that they are going to slaughter a red heifer, which is another controversy for me anyway, and that is going to bring in such act is going to bring in their Messiah, if you like. Shall we call them their Messiah, and also the rebuilding of the third or so-called third temple? Is that linked, do you think?
Absolutely, it's linked. Um, they they need the red heifer to purify the priesthood. There is a priesthood in Israel. We don't like them much. We don't want to do what they say because they are apostate. So we
Yes.
don't teach what they teach. But there are certain things that they do which we should follow. One of them is the calendar they set. Another one is when they sit in the seat of Moses reading from the Torah scroll. You do what Moses said. So but as far as what they say and teach about Judaism and about the Talmud and the Kabbalah and Zohar and all that stuff, no. But in order to operate in the temple, they have to have the red heifer's ashes. So they're going to slaughter. She's not a sacrifice. She's a slaughtering, and there's a difference, and I've taught about that before. But anyway, they're going to do that on the Mount of Olives. That's where that will take place. It's across the Kidron Valley from Temple Mount, and they are preparing for that. She's not going to be put on the altar. The red heifer does not go on the altar. But they do have an altar. It is operational. It is in a secret place, and they have been doing the daily lambs morning and afternoon for many years, even in their unclean state.
Wow.
But they do need that red heifer to purify them for when the temple is erected on Temple Mount. Does that make sense
Yes.
to you?
Yes. But Leviticus 19 talks about the red heifer, and we know that's indisputable about that. But this red heifer that have selected, which obviously did not come from the herd, as per Leviticus again, chapter 1. I'm just wondering, is this now to be viewed as a false act in this slaughtering, and I believe they're hoping to televise it, which as a spectacle, which again to me, is doesn't sound right. It's definitely not aligning with my thoughts at the moment. So therefore, is this red heifer is a kind of a, shall we say, a false act that they would be doing, thinking that the ashes will
Yeah.
hopefully get purified.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course it is. And that temple is not the Messiah Yeshua's temple. The Messiah that comes, the Prince of Yahweh, the Son. The Prince is always the son of the King. Yeshua is the son of the Most High King, and he is also the son. He's the Son of God and the Son of Man. His name is Yeshua. You know, his temple will be built by him. So says Zechariah. And the temple that is described in Ezekiel no way fits on Temple Mount according to the dimensions of it. Therefore, the temple they're building is not that one. So
Right.
whatever they're doing, it starts out with a falsity.
Okay, thank you.
Everything they're going to do will be a lie from the start.
Right. Okay. Now I understand. It's an apostate, as you say, but
Yes.
refreshingly for us to remind ourselves that this effectively the next true temple will be the temple as per the book of Ezekiel. And did you say Yeshua himself will be building that temple,
Yes.
which I understand is going to be massive?
Yes, the Messiah will build the temple. It will be built when the Messiah is here. That's what it
Now, is
amounts
that
to.
after the Great Tribulation, obviously, isn't it?
Yes, that's in the
Okay.
millennium when Yeshua is
In,
reigning.
right, but in the millennium, there will still be rebellious people or forces of evil, if you like, opposing or not wanting Yeshua's rule, which is going to be sad. It's hard to understand that, but am I right?
Yes, all through from the very beginning, the nations will have rebellion against Yeshua because, we read that if you don't come up for Sukkot, you're going to have no rain.
Yeah,
So, and at the end of the millennium, we read about another Gog-Magog war. How in the world can these people think they're going to go up against the
yeah,
king of the universe and
yeah,
take the earth away from him? But
yeah,
they will think that.
yeah. But I don't want to take up much more of your time, but isn't it marvelous of Elohim's generosity to give a complete 1,000 years for people to sort of, amend their ways, even though whilst Yeshua, his son, is reigning and ruling with righteousness and justice and all the rest of it, with all this other nonsense going on at the same time. It must
Yeah.
hurt Elohim's heart to see that man still cannot, if you leave him alone, mankind alone, they still in a rebellious way, and therefore needs that salvation that he sent his son long before the foundation of the world that was planned out to give mankind that salvation, if you like. I think I'll stop here. Kimberly, thank you so much.
You're welcome. The Gog-Magog war at the end of Revelation, if you think about it, those people have already been making a plan. And then Satan is allowed to come back onto the earth. He's been chained up. Now he's going to be let loose. And under his tutelage, under his leadership, the people are going to say, now we've had this plan we've been thinking about, and now we have this leader, we're going to follow this leader. It's the same pattern as when Satan made a third of the angels fall, right? But think about this. They've been planning this before Satan comes out of the pit. what that tells us is that it isn't Satan, it's not the devil that makes us do it. It's our own flesh. We have to give up our own flesh on the altar. Paul talks about that, daily. We have to struggle with this thing that our soul inhabits, this beast that we live in. And so there's a lot to think about with that second Gog-Magog war.
Yeah.
Dee?
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for your teaching on Joshua 4. And as I had said before, that the final verses of Joshua 4 were life verses, that because I went to a Christian school, my senior yearbook, they asked, what are your life verses? So I just opened the Bible and there it was. And I read the chapter quickly and I said, okay, this. So Joshua 4, and I chose the final verses. And and isn't Yahweh interesting that way, that he helped me choose my life verses? That, so while you were teaching, I was crying because I was thinking how good he was to show me that at a young age, and to bring my life this direction and lead me on this path, and to know that this is my future and that I can help people around me when the time comes to understand more. And but secondly, you were talking about the just the how things will transpire. But I had a thought, and it might just be a thought and it might not be true, or it might be just partially true. But you know how the Gazans, that nobody wants them. And I'm not talking about Hamas right now, because those are the pure evil ones. But I was thinking, I wonder how many Gazans that nobody wants. The surrounding countries don't want them, and Israel doesn't really want them. And they're, it's like the Samaritans that, I wonder how many of them are descended from the Samaritans, and that maybe that's why nobody wanted them, because they are so close to they're in the land, but yet they're mixed, likely, and I guess that was just a thought to me. So
Well, that's a pretty good thought. I hadn't thought about that, but that is there are mixed populations in Israel. The Jews deny that, but there are, and the Jews deny that their own population is mixed. But when it comes to the Palestinians, they certainly are a very mixed population, even though the majority of them are from Jacob. And so I don't know, that was a good thought. Thanks for sharing it.
And we just saw a movie yesterday about the Jewish children being saved out of Czechoslovakia, and it's called One Life, with Anthony Hopkins. It wasn't the most exciting movie I've ever seen, but it was moving. That when he approached the rabbi, and I don't know how this actually would have happened, but when he approached the rabbi said, "Why do you care about the Jewish children? Are you Jewish?" And well, his answer was basically, well, he knew that his grandparents were Jewish, but that he was raised as more of a Christian, I think, and then in England, and but they were from Germany and they had a German name, and that they changed their name, and that but now he was an agnostic, but his heart was moved for these children, and you wonder you know did he ever it's his heart was moved to save hundreds, as many children as he could during World War II or just before World War II. And because almost all of the children were killed that he didn't save. There were very, very few that even survived. And so, but he didn't want to admit that he was Jewish because, so anyway, but Yahweh will move people even if they don't believe, and he will move people to help other people. And so I guess we just need to pray for the way to be opened, and for hearts to be moved, and even, because there will need to be a way for people to get where we are going, to the promised land. There will need to be, some of us are so far away and it seems impossible, but Yahweh will make a way. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, and I don't remember the name of that man, but I know that he has a memorial in Jerusalem.
It's Nikki Winston, I believe. I think it's Nikki Winston.
Okay, yeah. I've been to a lot of places in Jerusalem, and I can't remember, I don't remember names very well, but I knew when you were talking, I knew about his memorial. Okay, thank you. Dawn.
I was just going to add to the discussion that you and John were having, which was really interesting, real quick. The deceiver will be locked up for 1,000 years and then will be loosed at the end of the 1,000 years. So any rebellion, kind of just adding to what you said, any rebellion that takes place during that 1,000 years is not because of deception, it's because of wicked hearts. But then the deceiver will come and deceive the people who didn't really want to follow Yeshua Messiah, but were only doing it because he was ruling with a rod of iron. Then he will deceive those people into thinking that they can overcome Yeshua's rule and take the world back. And so that's the deception that's coming at the end to make them think that they'll be able to do it. But when the deceiver is locked up, any rebellion will be, or any thoughts of rebellion will be because of wicked hearts, not because the people are deceived. They will know exactly what they're thinking of doing is wrong. They won't be deceived, but they'll have the wicked hearts to want to do it anyway. But then the other thing I just wanted to add real quick, if I like to listen to, and I don't recommend this just for the teachings or anything, but just to understand the thoughts of the Messianic Jews right now, which are quite interesting. I do listen occasionally to the Land of Israel Fellowship because they are Messianic Jews, and so they enlighten us as to what the Messianics are thinking and what they're looking for. And so I just think that's an interesting thing to listen to see what they're thinking with regards to the nations and that type of thing.
Okay, I agree with you. People will be deceived to think that they can overcome Yeshua. I liked that explanation, actually, about, when their own flesh is going to cause them to want to do that, but then the deceiver comes out of the pit and deceives them into thinking that they can actually take the earth back. Go ahead, Dawn.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify what I said about Messianic Jews. I mean Messianic Jews that don't believe in Yeshua is where you can get their thoughts and ideas from. they're not Messianic Jews that believe in Yeshua. So that's why I'm saying, I don't necessarily agree with all their teachings and everything. It's just to get the mindset of what's going on over there right now with the red heifer and the war and all of that stuff. It's just interesting to hear the perspective of those. This last week's one was really interesting because they talked about, the nations, and that the Jews have to accept the nations before their Messiah will come. And so it was interesting to listen to.
Yeah, that is interesting. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, we've been on here for about 2 hours, so unless there's any more questions or comments, I guess we can end the meeting. So, okay, well, Father, we thank you for this meeting and the good midrash after the teaching, and I pray that everything that is of you will go forth and that many people will begin to learn of you and learn of your kingdom and will identify as Israel and be Israelites, Father, following your commandments and doing all that you say. Go with everyone here in this room and wherever your people are as they go in and out this week, and protect all of us and provide for us, and please bring us all back together next Shabbat in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, everyone. Well, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Kimberly.
Shabbat
Thank you so
shalom.
much.
Shabbat Shalom,
wonderful.
Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
an awesome message.
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom.